Good evening.
Hello. Hi, Glenn. Hey, Ed.
Hello, Ed. How are you this evening?
Oh, yourself?
I'm doing very well, thank you.
Mr. Reiser, is it?
Yes, hello.
Hi. Thanks
I'm
for reaching
Michael.
out to the office and glad we could get you that link in time. I don't know
Thank
what
you.
happened earlier.
Error on my side.
No worries. I'm going to go off camera and just make sure that our presenters are not having any issues.
Got it. Thanks, Sean. Hey, Liz. Hey, Lauren. And Musa, thank you all for joining us. We're just going to give it a few more minutes. So we have Antonio Walker from DSNY here, who will be our first presenter, and waiting for Sean to just hear back from New Yorkers for Parks before we start recording. So hang tight, give it a few minutes.
Okay, so they may be jumping on. I made sure everybody had the link, and since we do have Mr. Whitaker from DSNY, if you want to get started, let me know now, and I'm sure the others will be joining us by the time we're ready for their presentation.
Sean, that sounds good to me. And yeah, I see that we're recording. So good evening, everyone. Welcome to CB14's Community Environment, Cultural Affairs, and Economic Development Committee meeting, taking place tonight on Wednesday, November 8th at 6:33. So we have two items on the agenda this evening. First is an update on curbside composting rollout in Brooklyn from DSNY. So I'll hand the floor over to Mr. Whitaker, and it's all yours.
Hello, everyone. Good evening. Can everyone hear me? Okay, great. Well, good evening, everyone. Sean, good evening. My name is Antonio Whitaker. I am the Assistant Director of the Bureau of Community Affairs here at the Department of Sanitation. And I'm just going to touch briefly on the new curbside composting, or it's rather not really new anymore. It's been going on for just over a month now, since October 2nd. I know that some folks have some questions, so I'm here to answer any questions or clear up any potential concerns. So I just wanted to touch upon that very quickly. Show of hands, who has brown bin? Yay! All right, very good, very good, very good. That makes me very happy. I'm actually trying to get a few for my neighbors here in Canarsie, so we're doing okay. If you know of anyone who still does not have a brown bin, there are still 5 free brown bin giveaways that are scheduled for the rest of the month. There's one tomorrow, actually, at the Rugby Library in East Flatbush. They are going very, very fast. So if you know anyone who still needs a brown bin, please tell them to go on the department's website, go to DSNY Curbside Composting, click on the Brooklyn link. You'll see a list of the brown bin giveaways. You click on the link and then register to pick one up. They are going fast. So just so you all, just kind of like going through, what to compost and what not to compost. Basically, you can compost any organic material, any old food scraps or food items. We take food soiled paper now, like pizza boxes or paper plates that have like grease on it, any type of food particles. Obviously, your leaf and yard waste we will take as well. We ask that you separate your leaf and yard waste and your food waste. Your leaf and yard waste can go in either a bin that can be no bigger than 55 gallons, or you can put your leaf and yard waste in a clear plastic bag, or you can mix. We ask that you don't do this, but if you mix some food with your leaf and yard waste, that's okay because we'll still take it. That's all compostable material, so that's all going to the same place. But we do ask that you separate the two. It's a little bit easier for our workers to handle when they come and pick up your compost on your recycling day. We now take bones, we take dairy products. We didn't before, we do now. All your compostable materials will be picked up on your recycling day, whenever that is. So make sure you set it out the night before. If you set it out before 8 o'clock, you'll have to adhere to the new set out rules. So make sure that everything is in a bin. The bin is securely closed. You can set stuff out by 6. If not, you can set it out by 8 o'clock. But your compostable food material should be in a bin. If you do put in a plastic bag or another bag and leave it out without a bin, you could potentially get summons for that. So your food compostable materials, make sure it's in either the official brown bin, or a bin of your choice. It just can't be any larger than 55 gallons. All right. What not to compost? Do not compost trash such as diapers, personal hygiene products, animal waste, wrappers, non paper packaging, and foam products. And don't compost any recyclable materials, such as like if you have old newspapers that you're going to throw out, that's not compostable. You set that off to the side for regular recyclable pickup. If you have large or bulky items, such as no couch or cabinet, something that you need to throw out that's fairly large, set that out on your trash only day, not on your recycling day. We will take that on your trash only day. Again, there are a couple of brown bin giveaway events that are still scheduled to happen. Again, the earliest one is tomorrow at the Rugby Library in East Flatbush. There's one on Sunday, I believe, at Broward Park in Crown Heights. There's another one at the Sunset Park on the 14th, which is next Tuesday. There's one at the New Lots Library in East New York on November 16th, and the last is at the Clinton Hill Library in Clinton Hill next Saturday on the 18th. If you have any additional questions, or if you're not really sure about anything after this call, feel free to go on our website to look at and any additional. We have some additional resources on our website on the curbside composting page on the DSNY website. So I am available to answer any questions or concerns that you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Whitaker. So I see Nina has her hand up, and if anyone else has any other questions, please raise your hand. So use the raise hand function. Before we go to Nina, I just had a quick question myself concerning composting. So I live in a building, we have 114 units. We have received our brown bin, but obviously this bin is too small for the entire building. During your presentation, you mentioned that households can use their own bin so long as it's below 55 gallons. So would you recommend that our building have separate bins in addition to the brown bin? Or would we be able to receive more bins from DSNY?
So to answer the first part of your question, yes, I would suggest that since you live in a rather large building, that you speak either to your landlord or to your property manager about purchasing additional bins, not the official brown bin, but additional bins on your own. Every residence will get a single bin. Obviously, your building got one. It's probably a little bigger than a building that has 9 or less units. So a larger building like yours would get a 21 gallon, but a smaller building like mine, for example, I live in a house with 3 apartments. We only have the 13 gallon one, right? So that's the standard kind of issue, right? So yeah, so I would say, talk to either your landlord or your property managers, your property management company, to potentially purchase additional bins as needed. And yes, the bin can't be any bigger than 55 gallons, which is your standard bin that you see at Home Depot, Lowe's. That's the standard size.
Got it. Thank you. We'll go ahead and Nina.
Yes. I guess I actually have 2 questions. One, are people who are not putting out their compost going to be penalized? And number 2, can you clarify the putting a bag in the compost bin and what happens to that bag?
Okay. Yeah. Thank you for your question. So, we understand that, asking people to think differently about the way they dispose of their food waste is going to take some time. So we understand that, this is going to be quite a lift for some folks, because when you have old food, when you have expired food, when you have food that are going to throw away, you kind of just throw it in the garbage. You don't really think about it. It's kind of just like muscle memory. You finish that apple, you take the core, you just throw it out in the garbage, and you don't even think about it. So we're asking people to fundamentally try to think about the way they dispose of compostable food waste or old food differently. And so with regards to getting a summons or paying a penalty, that actually isn't going to start until 2026. So so we have some time. We want to give folks time to kind of get used to doing this before the department starts writing any summonses for potentially violating this rule. And with regards to lining your bin, it's highly recommended that you do. You don't have to, but I mean, I think we strongly suggest that you should, because it's just going to be a lot easier to clean. It's also a lot easier for sanitation workers to empty the contents of those bins into our trucks. If it's in a bag, kind of just slides right out, and it's also easier for you to clean it out, right? So if you just dump food in there without a bag, and you have to hose it out, you have to scrub it out, it starts to smell. You don't really want that. So you can line your bin with whatever bag you want. It doesn't have to be a clear bag. It could be your standard black trash bag. But I suggest, when I have these conversations with folks, to line your bin with a clear plastic bag, because this is how I think about it, right? Black bags equals trash. Clear bags is everything else. So when a sanitation worker comes to your home or to your building and they take out your trash, when they see clear bags and black bags, they automatically take all the black bags and throw that in the trash, and then your clear bags go into your recyclables or compostable truck, right? So you just kind of want to to make sure that your compost gets put in the right place and not thrown out as trash. So my suggestion is to line whatever bin you choose, either if you have a brown bin or if you have a bin that you bought, to line that with a clear plastic bag.
Thank you.
Next, we have Musa.
Thank you. Thanks for coming to speak with us today. I had two questions. First, I think this is partially answered maybe by a previous answer you gave that was on the subject, but so that we received our brown bin, we want to put it out. There's some concern about if this bin eventually gets stolen, just like other types of bins get stolen. And so we've held off on putting it out or using it. It doesn't sound, correct me if I'm wrong, it doesn't sound like the city will replace the brown bin, or that we can even buy a replacement brown bin. But if we do lose our brown bin, then we should just buy another bin under 55 gallons. That's my first question. And then my other question is just big picture. Have you noticed any issues like throughout the borough as this has been rolled out? I'd just be curious to know like what issues have kind of popped up, have they been resolved, so on and so forth.
So to answer your question, if your bin is stolen, and that's an issue, we hear about it constantly. If your bin is stolen, unfortunately, the department is unable to replace it with a free one, and the vendor that the department uses is not publicly available for regular New Yorkers, for regular people to contact them directly to purchase a bin. So you would have to purchase, a bin at your own expense if your brown bin is stolen. And to answer the second part of your question, I'm just going to, repeat what I just said. Having bins that are being stolen, we constantly getting reports of bins that are stolen. That's been a huge issue for us. My suggestion is, and I know this is not this may not be aesthetically pleasing, and this may not be something that folks want to do, but my suggestion is to buy one of those bike chains, or you can get one of those relatively cheap chains from Lowe's. to tie your bin to a fence or to a pole or somewhere on your property where it can be secured when you don't roll it out, the night before it gets picked up on your recycling day. So like it becomes harder for people to steal. I really don't understand why people steal these bins, and it's not just brown bins. Just today, actually, I was on the phone with a local council member from Brooklyn who who told me 6 bins on her block, regular bins, like the green mesh bins, were stolen. And so, so they need to be replaced. And I don't know why people want green mesh bins, but it happens. People steal them, and then we have to replace them. Not really sure what they're doing with them. I don't know if there's a black market for and there's a resale value on them. I have no idea, but unfortunately, this has become a huge issue for the department. So my suggestion is to try to like secure it as much as you can. When it's not out, to be picked up, on your recycling day.
Thank you for that. Glenn?
Thank you. In the past, I put all of my yard waste and leaves in the brown paper bags for that purpose, and they were picked up twice, usually in November and into December. Is that no longer happening?
You can still put your leaf and yard waste in brown paper bags. We will take that on your recycling day, like, just as we would if you put your leaf and yard waste in a bin or in a clear plastic bag. So we'll still take that.
So there's not going to be dedicated days for picking up leaves anymore.
Right. So like you said, in the past, there were certain times that we used to do that. Now we're going to do that every week on your recycling day.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Sean?
Yeah, first a fun fact about brown bags. The Community Board 14 District Office has a whole bunch of them. So if people want to come and pick up brown bags, we are distributing them on a first come first served basis, and they're moving fast. So maybe even call before you come in for them to make sure we still have them. But I have a question, Antonio, and it kind of alludes to maybe a partial answer to Moose's question, because I have a question about operations, that because it's a bumpy rollout a little bit in the district. We have 4 sections in the district, and each one of those sections have, more than one route in them. But in some of the districts, we're doing 2 rear loaders, and then a third truck goes into the district for compost. Sorry, we'll do a split back for recycling, a rear loader for collection, and then there's a second rear loader coming in to pick up compost. And then in other sections, we have 2 split backs, so one for compost and collection, and the other for recycling. And then that district, that section, then needs its own truck for bulk collection. And we're getting a lot of missed calls on composting. I don't know if that's just a matter of getting used to the routes, or trucks that used to have a route within a section are now doing the full section. But in terms of operations, we have a lot more trucks out on the street. I think BK14 got 5 additional new trucks to support the collection of compost. And it's also necessitating an extra 4 to 12 collections and midnight collections. So I'm just wondering if this change in operations is permanent, or if the department sort of anticipates the routes kind of being redrawn so that they can finish on shift. There's also, well, I won't go so far into the weeds, but it has required extra shifts and extra vehicles. And better than I, that those 4 to 12 shifts in the midnights, there's a pay differential on those. So I'm just wondering if we're tracking cost, tracking operations, tracking weights on the trucks, because I know like the compost is really, really light and collection is really heavy because it used to go into a rear loader. Now it's going into a split back. So the trucks are actually uneven as they roll out to dump. So those are my concerns, just ironing out the operations.
Okay. Well, you had mentioned that we have several new trucks in the district. The split trucks are now going to be used for both recycling and for compost. Before they were used, like one side was for your metal, your glass, and then another side was your paper, your cardboard. Now we're doing one side is your organic compost, the other side is your paper and your glass, because all that can be separated once it gets to our garage, to our facilities before, and then the organic stuff goes to our facility at Newtown Creek to be composted, and broken down via anaerobic digestion before before we send it out. So if there's any specifics about a route or a number of routes that you have, like, please email that to me, let me know. I can talk to the local district to see if something needs to be rejiggered or a route needs to be redrawn. Generally we try to pick up compost on the on shift 3, which is the midnight to 8 a.m. shift. I know in my neighborhood, that's when pretty much everything gets picked up. I know, but some other neighborhoods, there may be between on the 1600 to midnight shift, which is shift number 2. But again, that's more for the local districts and the local deputy chiefs who oversee several districts kind of make those determinations. I know that there's some neighborhoods, especially during this time of year when we have daylight savings, where maybe an accommodation would be made. So that's all on the district level. But yeah, if you have any specifics, like, please let me know.
Okay.
Talk to
Okay, I'll talk to the superintendent. I mean, you know that I always say that we're in such good hands with BK14. They're really good with what they got, but I will circle back on any particulars. And just a real quick additional thanks to you, because I know there's been pressures on schedule of DSNY staff on nighttime work. So thank you for this extra heavy lift and being with us tonight.
Of course, not a problem.
Musa, then Glenn.
Thanks. One last question I had is, I know that when the city set out the later set out times, if you're just putting out garbage bags, then there's like some type of odd enforcement mechanism here where it's not a 311 request. On our street, we have like chronic early garbage bag disposal, I guess, on the street. Who do we reach out to for like enforcement stuff?
May I answer that for you? Musa, I would report that to your local community board.
Okay. Well, okay. Got it.
All along Argyle Road, Sean, just letting you know. But related to,
or do you have addresses for me? We can do this offline too.
Yes. I just to piggyback off of that question, I'm just wondering, with regards to the new set out times as well, just as far as cooperation within the district, and like, is there like any guidelines or any, I guess, like related to enforcement, just any measures to make sure that buildings are in compliance, or homeowners and so on and so forth, what that has looked like since the new set out times have begun.
They've been going, and Antonio, you can jump in because it may have been directed to you, but just my experience with our supervisors is they've been going door to door. They've been knocking on doors where there have been early putouts. They've done that on their own initiative, and when it's complaint driven. They have to do it when it's in the 311 system, and then they also have to then spend time filling out a big report about having done it. But so they go and they have a conversation, and they give one heads up, just in case you didn't know, and then the next time they swing back around and they'll write them. So we've got some chronic buildings that, even though they're getting written, aren't learning a lesson. So, but we'll try it on your block for sure. Hopefully they'll be a little more, responsive to the enforcement. But I know that they've been actively having a conversation and then writing when, as a follow-up when necessary.
Great. We'll go to Glenn, and I have one other just related DSNY question, and hopefully we can wrap that up. So go ahead, Glenn.
Thank you. I'd just like to get a better idea of the overall idea behind this. So that is, recycling was obvious that we're going to take a lot of material and not put it in landfills and try to reuse it. So as I understand it, you're going to compost this, and what happens next? When you were doing the leaves in composting, they were given back to people if they wanted it for their gardens. What's the plan with the composting on this organic material? And then just as a little aside, the landfills right now are not particularly healthy, but they do have some organic material in them. Now, if we take all that out, they're really dead for a very, very long time. So what is the idea behind this program? Thank you.
So so you had mentioned just now that obviously, with regards to um, taking organic compost, making fertilizer, and giving that back to the community, we're still doing that. We've just now scaled that up. So before, when you would get, if you were to get, a bag here and there of compost. Like now, we're hoping that we'll be able to give out a lot more. We've just hosted a number of compost giveaways this year, and we'll be doing more starting in the spring. A third of New York City's trash is food. So we figured, well, why don't we take that? That's all organic material that can be broken down and made into fertilizer, which we can give back to New Yorkers. We can take excess and sell that to try to make a profit. We can trap a lot of the methane that when that waste begins to break down, we can trap a lot of that, and we can use that as biofuel. For all those reasons, that's what we're doing this. But ultimately, it's because we produce a third of our garbage is food. So it's a lot easier to compost that and not put that into landfills. And also, it's part of Mayor Adams and Commissioner Tish's overall a goal to help to reduce the number of rats in the city, right? To reduce their food sources, right? So if we can take that food and do something positive with it, and and prevent rats from eating it, so they don't procreate, so they don't, and so we can live in a much cleaner and healthier neighborhoods. Ultimately, that's all a good thing, and we're hoping that it all trickles down and then kind of, and that's what the ultimate goal is.
Thank you.
Again, thank you, Antonio, for taking the time to speak with us tonight. Unrelated to compost, but under DSNY's purview, I just wanted to touch upon containerization for small businesses. So this was another initiative that DSNY rolled out. I'm just wondering if you would be able to share any updates as far as compliance. I'm just noticing, and I understand 311 is probably the best way to go about addressing some, especially for chain businesses such as Dunkin' Donuts or Starbucks or what have you. In our district that are not complying with this rule of having to set out their garbage in containers. Can you maybe address that for folks that are not familiar or as familiar with this, and how we can go about addressing this?
Sure. So as of September 5th of this year, all chain stores with 5 or more locations must secure all of their trash in containers with lids. And on August 1st, I believe, of this year, all food-related businesses needed to do that. So, so food-related businesses need to do that first, and then, a month later, all chain stores need to do that, and eventually down the line, most likely all stores will need to do it. But for now, it's only food businesses. That means any business that either sells food or prepares food, so that includes your bodegas, all of any type of restaurant, catering halls and such, supermarkets, and all chain stores. Like you said, your Dunkin' Donuts, your Starbucks, your Wendy's, like they're all required now to containerize all of their trash. They can set out their trash an hour before their closing time, or after 8 o'clock. Whichever they choose. If they do it after 8 o'clock, then it doesn't need to be in a bin, but we're highly encouraging folks to make sure that it's in a bin. They put it out an hour before. I'm sorry, excuse me. I'm looking at my notes. I may have misspoke. I apologize. After 8 p.m., if placed in after 8, recyclables do not need to be in a container, not trash. So trash will need to be in a container, but recyclables don't. Want to make sure that I got that right. I'm looking at my notes here. So the containers need to be stored inside either a rear yard, or inside the store if possible, if there's space. If space is not available, then bins can be stored within 3 feet of the building line when not set out for collection. Bins must be maintained in a neat and orderly manner and always allow for a clear path of pedestrian travel on the sidewalk. Obviously, if a business is not complying with those rules, then enforcement will go out and give them a summons. And that's been happening, a lot over the last couple of months. Enforcement's given out a number of summonses to a number of bad actors throughout the city. I could just give you kind of like an example here. I was in Midtown about a month ago on a walkthrough around 54th and 8th in front of a Wingstop. And it was about 2 in the afternoon. And I'm staying there literally like in my DSNY shirt, right? And folks literally walked outside of it with tons of trash and just dumped it right at my feet, 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Fortunately, I was there with one of the deputy chiefs who, walked in and we just summoned them right there on the spot. Because, like, how can you, don't you say, like, I'm literally right here. You could have at least waited until I left, but, you didn't. So, so it's something that we're very much aware of. We monitor areas that are of concern to us. We get reports from local community boards and local elected officials and bids about who the bad actors are. So, we keep our eye out. We try to monitor them as best we can.
All right. Thank you, Antonio. I don't see any other hands up. So again, thank you for your time. I am not seeing our second presenter.
Yeah,
Sean, did you hear back from
did
New
you
York Regional
want
Park?
to let Mr. Whitaker go if he was done? Or
Yes,
unless
absolutely.
you want to hang around, you're welcome to. Or you can just take the rest of the night off.
Well, thank you all. I'm going to take the rest of the night off. It's been a day. But thank you. So if you have any additional questions, feel free to let Sean know. And she'll email me. I'll drop my email in the chat. I'm not very familiar with WebEx here. I'm so used to using Okay, maybe I'm not sure. Maybe I can't use the chat. I'm not 100%.
There isn't a. It doesn't look like there's a chat function. It looks like there's a Q&A function. I'm
Oh,
not.
you know what, that, you can just reach out to me and I'm happy to share your information if people need to reach you directly.
Okay, not a problem. All right.
Okay.
Thank you all.
Many thanks.
Have a good night.
And so Ed, the next presenter is signing on momentarily. There may have been a communication mix-up with her and the colleague as to who had which board. But in the meantime, I know that Mr. Reiser also has a PSA if you want to fill the time in that we're waiting with that.
Absolutely. Mr. Reiser, the floor is yours.
Oh, thank you very much. Here, let me put on my other background. So I am from Paint Care, and we recycle paint for free. So this program is completely voluntary. And, it's interesting because I actually used to work on organics. Organics, there's nothing toxic about organics, right? I mean, in a pinch, many of the organics, you could put them in your garden and that would be great. Paint, not so much, right? Paint, is not something that you want to find in your garden. And in the past, the options for disposing of paint have been, pretty difficult. Taking it to the DSNY special waste drop-off site was an option. Saving it up to to the safe event that happens twice a year, right? Where 200 people, are in line ahead of you. Another option. But now with Paint Care, you can take paint back to local paint retailers. And Matt, do I have permission to share my screen?
It's up to the chair, but I don't know how much time before this other person. Oh, looks like you do.
Oh, okay, great. So I just wanted to, I'm not going to take much time. I just wanted to show you. These are the two drop-off sites in your community that are close to your community. Corner Hardware is right in CB14, and Certified Borough Park Lumber is not so far away. And I'll send you these posters. I hope that you can share them with the community. Do you guys have any questions for me?
If you would also email that to our office so that we can post it on our website, we'd be more than happy to do that.
Will do. Thank you. That would be great. I will do that. All right.
Thank you, Mr. Reiser. I don't see any hands up, but yeah, this is wonderful information, and thank you for sharing that.
Great. Thank you. Thank you for inviting me this evening. Have a good night.
Thank you. And Cherise Palomino has joined us, and she is representing New Yorkers for Parks. If you want to turn it over to her, Mr. Co-Chair.
Thank you, Cherise, for joining us. So we have a presentation from New Yorker for Parks with regards to supporting maintenance and operations in city parks. So without further ado, the floor is yours, Cherise.
Okay, I'm going to, can you see my screen? I'm sharing. Okay.
Yeah,
So,
we can see your screen.
Great. So I'm Cherise Palomino. I'm the Director of Advocacy and Programs here at New Yorkers for Parks. And thank you for giving us the opportunity to do a presentation. If you don't know, New Yorkers for Parks is the only independent citywide organization where we advocate for parks and open spaces. And so we do that through our community work, through our partnerships, through our advocacy, and through research. We have a coalition called Playfair for Parks that compromises over 400 groups and organizations. And we are the co-founder along with the New York League of Conservation Voters and DC 37, the Parks Workers Union. And this is a list of the organizations that are a part of our Playfair coalition. I can send you the PowerPoint in a PDF, and you can see all of the groups that are part of our coalition. And so one of the things that we do, as I mentioned, is research. And so two of our biggest points of research has been the release of our 1% for Parks impact report that we released earlier this year. And then in 2021, we released open space profiles, which really gives an assessment of access to park space and other amenities in each of the community boards. And so 1% for parks is our largest advocacy campaign, where we're calling on the mayor and the city council to allocate 1% of the city budget for parks. This is a call the mayor has promised to deliver by the end of his term, and the overwhelming majority of the city council support. And so how did we get here? We got here because there's been 50 years of austerity when it comes to the parks budget. In the 70s, the Parks Department received over 1% of the city's operating budget annually. Once the fiscal crisis hit in the late 70s, the Parks Department budget was slashed to 0.5%. And today, the Parks Department's budget is at 0.6% of the city budget. So during the past 40 years, the growth of the city's agency budgets are pretty incredible. If you look at the police department, transportation, sanitation, they've grown significantly. The New York City expense budget, which is the operating budget for the city and not that doesn't include capital, has grown by 127%, where the Parks Department's budget has only increased by 72%. And so we have this fact that's really staggering. If you look at Los Angeles, for example, which is Los Angeles spends 2.9% of its city budget to maintain and operate 16,000 acres of parkland. And what people don't realize is how much parkland New York City has. So New York City has 30,000 acres of parkland, nearly double Los Angeles, and we're allocating 0.6% of our city budget for parks. And so you can see in the third column how much dollars per capita is spent on maintaining and operating our parks departments, respectfully. And this slide is showing you the population, New York City's population growth and the number of parks workers. So as our population has grown and the Parks Department has, decreased in workers. So there's not as much workers today as there was 50 years ago to maintain parks that are being used by nearly 1.5 million more people. One staggering statistic we like to share is that New York City has one gardener for every 114 acres, where San Francisco and Chicago each have one gardener for every 18 acres. So that goes back to showing you, if we go back to this slide, or the investments, the lack of investments in parks compared to other agencies. Rec center funding and staffing has decreased over the years. So we're looking back to the 70s. The rec center funding has decreased by almost $25 million, and the rec center staff have decreased by almost 300 staff per rec center for the total rec centers in New York City. This other data point we use is that in FY22, the overtime alone, not the budget, but just the overtime for police officers was $670 million, and the entire budget for the Parks Department was $618 million. And so this is a survey this was some data that came out of the mayor's preliminary management report, that 85% of park stewards record that 29% there's been a 29% increase in crimes in the first 4 months of FY23, and 26% increase in crime with property in the first 4 months. And so the first several data points are what we did a survey with. And so 85% of our respondents recorded an increase in usership. 70% recorded an increase outside of the traditional busy season. And so this correlates to needing more support for our parks. What does 1% mean for New York City, 1% of the budget for parks? It means that we can have a 21st century park system that meets our needs, that our parks can be clean and well maintained throughout the year, that that we can have safe parks with staff building relationships with community members. We can have quicker repairs. We can avoid longer closures and allow for better accessibility of our parks. and we can have a comprehensive access to 10,000 acres of natural areas and trails. And we know that there are a ton of benefits for parks. One is we know that $1.4 billion annually with access to parks helps to reduce spending in healthcare. That's nationally. And for New York City, you know, $680 million of stormwater diversion and carbon capture. And then $17 billion annually spent and $600 million in recreation spending annually in parks. So this is a slide where the mayor has tweeted our 1% for parks when he was running for mayor. And these are some quotes where he talked about supporting our parks. And he says, parks are not a luxury, it's a necessity. And our goal is to have that 1%. So we have to make sure that we continue to push the mayor to get us towards 1%. We have 44 council members in support of 1%. No one has opposed it. Right now, there's just, if you don't see a council member on here, it's because they have not gotten back to us. We have over 10,000 people who signed our petition calling on 1% for parks. And so what you can do is provide a letter of support for our campaign. I can give you the petition for you to share, and each of you sign it and share the petition, and then attend rallies that we're organizing. We're planning a big rally in the spring, so we'll follow up with you about the rallies coming up. And that's our campaign for 1% for parks. So I'll take any questions if you have any.
Sharice, thank you for that presentation, and I thought it was informative, and I personally agree with that the advocacy that you're doing as it relates to this campaign. I'm just wondering, just in terms of your research that you've done in one of your slides, as it highlights community district CB14. We are one of the poorest parks districts in the city, and I'm just wondering if there's any other campaigns that New Yorkers for Parks is focusing on as it relates to equity, you know, in getting more parkland created, especially for those districts that are lacking this park space.
So great question. We have created what we call our 5-point plan for park equity, and I can drop it in the chat. And number 2 on the list, the first is obviously the 1% for parks. Number 2 on the list is to build more parks. We do want to make sure that community members and that communities that have least lower amounts of park space can access more park space, more green space. And so we definitely want to build more parks, focusing on parks and playgrounds in under-resourced communities, and invest in comprehensive maintenance of natural areas. And so that is something that we do. There's a couple of bills in the city council that we supported. There was a bill to create some micro parks, like requiring the Parks Department and DOT to identify areas that they can then convert into micro parks, whether it's a dead end street, and then they can identify whether or not they can create a small park there or just other areas. And so those are bills and legislations that we've supported and will continue to support opportunities to increase building parks in communities that need it.
Thank you. I'll turn it over to board member Liz Dennings.
Hi, thank you so much. Thank you so much for this presentation as well. I think there's a lot of really interesting things to think about there. And, you know, I echo our committee's chair, Ed, on his personal views and have them as well. One thing that I was thinking about just in terms of how underinvested our parks are right now is not only do we, you know, would we like to be funding them for the future and to get routine maintenance, but a lot of parks in our, or parks near our district are very, very have a lot of deferred maintenance on them. Like I'm thinking about Prospect Park and how, you know, you'd mentioned stormwater resiliency, which Prospect Park could be a really, really fantastic space for that, but right now is instead not retaining its water and dumping it all out into our district and flooding a lot of people's homes and making really dangerous street conditions. And so I guess one of my main question is just, do you know, is 1% kind of enough to like get our parks back into the place they should be? Or is there, you know, maybe does there need to be like some additional funding that maybe we should be pushing for as well to kind of catch up from these years and years and decades of kind of deferred or not even done at all maintenance to parks? Thank you.
So that's a really great question. So there's two sets of fundings. There's our call for 1% for parks is around the operating budget, the maintenance, the expense budget. So that's really around providing the staffing, the maintenance, the operations, and then there's an additional capital budget that you know, has to be aligned, right? So the city's willing to allocate money to capital projects, but once those projects are completed, they still need to be maintained so that they have longevity. We also need, you know, deeper investments in some of the infrastructure, the climate infrastructure around parks, the maintenance of our trails, the maintenance of our natural areas, as you mentioned. And so there are other areas where there was money promised. So in the Plan NYC, there was money promised to do some of this natural areas and trail maintenance work through this climate resiliency plan. And so that seems to be eliminated with the mayor's budget cuts. And so there are other areas where there has to be kind of alignment when we talk about some of a comprehensive way of addressing this. One of the other things that we support, we're part of a coalition called Forest for All NYC, which is run by the Nature Conservancy, and they're calling for increasing New York City's tree canopy because the more trees you have, the more it cools the city. And so that's another expense, and that's another way that we can improve some of the climate concerns that we have.
Thank you, Cherise. I'll turn it over to Sean. Sean, I believe you're still muted.
Thank you. I'm sorry about that. You may have alluded to this, but if so, I think it bears underscoring the expense budget that you're advocating to increase by donating the, you know, making sure there's at least 1% of the city budget dedicated to parks. As one of the expense items that would address is forestry, right? Like not just in the parks, but there's all of our street trees. That would be included in terms of what could be funded through this. Am I correct?
Yes. So we in this past budget, we did get a renewal of a few $1,000,000 for forestry and natural areas. The challenge is with these budget cuts, it eliminates the staffing for those areas. So that's how some of the ways that this is impacted. And so we do understand that there is a financial crisis happening in the city, but our argument is that we need to make wiser investments. We need to be very intentional about where we're making cuts. You know, the cuts that were implemented in October 1st was a 5% cut straight across the city. So every agency had to cut 5%. 5% of an agency with $600 million is a staggering loss compared to an agency that has $11 billion or $5 billion. And so we would like to see a more equitable approach to managing this crisis in a way that our park system isn't devastated. And one of the other key things is that, you know, the park system is being used to house, you know, asylum seekers during this moment. And so we need to make sure that the Parks Department has the resources to address these growing crises. The Parks Department was critical during COVID, and so we need to make sure that we're making the right investments.
Heard. And just to add to that, I mean, the other, in terms of it being an investment, if you look at the comptroller's report on claims that have been paid out because of property damage due to falling limbs and in personal injury and worse, you know, that's an argument that we've tried to make from our vantage point. And then one last thing is that this, you don't really touch on capital, except that I did speak to Daniel Abram about the fact that the capital funding needs a paradigm shift, just like you're talking about budget cuts need a paradigm shift. And when we're depending on local elected officials to fill in the gap on capital investments, it goes by the sort of whims of the elected officials instead of what Ed was alluding to, a real objective needs criteria. And so I wonder if there's any advocacy, not to raise more money for capital, because I know you're very focused on this expense side, but just to talk about the funding that does exist and how it gets allocated and just the paradigm shifts that need to happen for things to happen equitably. Thanks.
Great question. So one of number 3 on our list of 5-point equity plan is to fix the capital process. And so we did get a bill passed that we co-wrote with Councilmember Shaker Krishnan, who represents Jackson Heights and Elmhurst. He's the chair of the Parks Committee, which is to make the Parks Department look at ways in which they can reduce the time and cost of the capital process. We have another bill that's in the Finance Committee now, looking at it citywide, that would mandate all the city agencies to do the same thing. I hear your statement, because it's true. You know, there was a council member in Queens who allocated, you know, millions of dollars to add sprinklers, kiddie sprinklers in a park. And so when that happens, for example, the Parks Department has to add the kiddie sprinklers because the money's been designated for that purpose. But then what happened was, you know, you can't just get the ribbon cutting in a year with the sprinklers, because once they opened the park, once they did the ribbon cutting, you know, would go in the bathroom and you flush the toilet, the sprinklers cut off because there was underlying infrastructure issues. So there has to be like a comprehensive, you know, examination. A lot of these, you know, kind of allocations are often cosmetic issues, and then they don't have the underlying, they're not addressing underlying issues, especially around infrastructure, giving a city that has really aging infrastructure, like New York. And so that definitely is something that we intend to address, and we're still working through with this capital process. That you know, that includes the state government having to, you know, make rules around the regulation of the capital process as well. And we know that it's as cumbersome as it is to reduce corruption, but then it also just causes so much backlog and challenges to get things done.
Thank you, Charisse. I'm not seeing any other hands up. Oh, sorry, I spoke too soon. Florencia, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Ed. Good evening, everyone. Yeah, I just wanted to piggyback on what both Elizabeth and Sean said, is especially what Elizabeth said with the operating budget, that being the stable that pays for maintenance and workers. Shouldn't there be like a greater increase, since the capital goes towards projects that are not long-term, and we're thinking about the long-term benefits, and knowing that having more green spaces actually helps with the health of the people, you know, and a more productive society is better overall. So I'm wondering if 1% is enough. Shouldn't it be? Can there be even 1.5?
Well,
You know.
we're having a hard time getting to 1%, so asking for more is a little bit much. We're at, you know, just over 600 million, so we need an additional 300 million, which is a drop in the bucket in a budget that's $107 billion. But every agency is claiming that they have urgent needs for 300, 400, 500 million dollars. And so it becomes a matter of prioritization. But as you said, you know, that's one of our arguments. If you're allocating all of this money for these capital projects, there has to be the staff that can maintain this, right? Like they have to be able to make sure that there's longevity in the investments in these projects. And so it just really boils down to how our city government is prioritizing the investments in our city agencies.
Okay.
Thank you, Florencia, and thank you, Charisse, for this presentation. I'm not seeing any other hands for questions. So at this time, can I call for a motion to draft a letter of support from this committee?
You know what, it's
Sean?
sort of a tricky thing since with the open meetings law, that would have to, you would have to bring that up at the full board meeting. I don't think
Got
you're
it.
gonna get a lot of pushback, but just to stay true to the open meetings law, no actual decision or action can be taken at this committee meeting since it's not in person.
Right. Thanks for the
Can
reminder,
we
Sean.
ask for a consensus, Sean?
Sure, or it
Are
can
we
just
able to
be
ask for a
done,
consensus?
or it can just be done at the board meeting. Yeah, it depends on how formal you feel tonight.
Well, I was gonna entertain a motion, but we can ask for consensus just to get a pulse of everyone in the room. So, all those that are in favor of a letter of support for New Yorkers for Parks, say aye.
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 Alright.
Aye.
So our full board meeting will take place next Monday. So we will be as committee chair will be presenting this to the full board and requesting making that motion to draft a letter of support. But again, Charisse, thank you for your time and sharing this information with us.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much. I can follow up, or Daniel, one of us can follow up with a copy of the PowerPoint and the links to our petitions in English and in Spanish.
Thank you. And we have the PowerPoint that's on our website. And I'll follow up with you next Tuesday to let you know how the letter writing request fared in the full board meeting.
All right. Thank you so much. Take care.
I'm pretty optimistic about it.
Thank you. That's great. Thank you so much.
Charisse, you're welcome to hang out, or feel free to enjoy the rest of your evening. So we've covered two of our agenda items, so I'm just gonna move us along to other business. Nina, if you want to just briefly share with us your experience as it relates to Rad Academy for committee members.
Oh, can you give me half a sec just to grab my notes?
Yeah, sure.
In the meantime, I'm happy to pass by you and Melissa a suggested first draft of the letter so it's prepared for Monday if you'd like.
Oh, great. Yes, that would be super helpful.
Yeah, I kind of have some prepackaged paragraphs that I can just throw in there from the district needs statement, so it'd be easy for me to do it.
Great. While Nina's grabbing her notes, I know Patricia has included this in the email that was sent out earlier today, but just as a reminder regarding the town hall that council member Rita Joseph is having regarding flood mitigation, which is taking place next week. So I just wanted to take this opportunity to remind everyone. So it's next Tuesday, November 14th, from 6 to 8 at PS 217, which is 1100 Newkirk Avenue. So this should be interesting, and I look forward to this discussion. And hopefully you can all join us. Okay, without further ado, Nina, if you're ready.
Okay, so first of all, Sean, I believe I forwarded something about Rad Academy to you. Hopefully there's information that could be made public. Just some, there was a lot of information. It was like, I don't know, an hour and a half or something online, so they covered a lot of ground. But just a few things that are important takeaways. First of all, rats are extremely prolific. They can have like 84 babies a year, and those 84 babies grow very fast and go on to produce 84 babies, and so on and so forth. So anything that can be done to stop that is very important. And they need surprisingly little food and little water, like an ounce of food and an ounce of water a day. Some things that homeowners can do is look around your house. look around your yard, particularly the tree beds are a place where they can burrow. So pull away those weeds and whatever else is growing there, and rake out the garbage, and look for holes, especially holes that have like a little kind of a mound around them. Those are rat burrows, and you want to fill them with rocks, rake them over, cover them up, look for entries and exits, because the more you stress the rats, the less they'll reproduce, and the more you may just help get rid of them altogether. Trash absolutely has to be in bins that are closed and hopefully hard for rats to open and get into. It just drives me crazy when I see just bags out on the street, because we know what happens with that stuff. So, you know, if you're putting out food for birds, and squirrels maybe, you want to, or stray cats, you want to stay with that food, and or keep an eye on it, and after it's been out, you want to clean it up and take it inside or dispose of it in compost or something, so that it's not out there becoming rat food. And people who own buildings, look around your house, your sidewalks, other places where rats can actually chew their way through concrete and burrow their way into homes and buildings and so forth. I think those are like the big takeaways that I have. And the other thing is, if you are putting out traps, rats like to go along balls. They go linearly, and so what they say is, like, if you have a trap out there, leave it out there a while, because the rats get habituated to its being there. And if you've caught a rat, don't clean the trap. Get, whatever you do with that rat, I guess, get rid of it, but leave the rat smell in the trap, because that will attract more rats to go into the trap, because they'll smell other rats and they'll go, oh, rats have been here, so it must be cool, and they'll go in there too. So I guess that's about, those are the most salient points. If anyone has any questions. They did not give me a diploma, but they did send me a letter of acknowledgement for my attendance at Rat Academy. So ta-da, ta-da.
It looks like we have a few questions. We'll start with Liz, then Florencia, then Carson.
Hey, when I went to Rat Academy, I think it was either earlier this year or the year before. I just want to make sure that I'm like up to date on all the right things here. They had mentioned that when you do use rocks to fill in rat holes, that you should use like pea gravel size rocks, which is kind of like the size of peas, just in case anyone doesn't know what that is. I didn't know what it was until I went to Rat Academy. Because like bigger things kind of provide like shade and comfort for rats. Is that still the best?
Yes, exactly.
The best recommendation.
Good point. Thank you. Yeah, you want to use like fine, gravel that will fall into the hole and really block it up. They can actually push their way out if it's just like, you put a piece of rock or something over the hole. They're pretty strong, and they can push their way out of those.
Florencia?
Yeah. Hi, Nina. Are you saying that we have super rats that can chew through concrete? I didn't know that.
I guess they just have crazy strong teeth. So they were saying, if you do discover, say in your house, your garage, or someplace like that, that there's a rat problem, aside from cleaning up anything that might be attracting them, like keeping bags of dog food or cat food out in the garage, which people do, or putting their bags of garbage, say, in the garage, or if in your basement or something like that, putting some kind of sheet metal is, I'm just trying to think, there was like, they said like sheet metal, that they can't chew through that. And so that can be sort of inserted in some places as a barrier. Sometimes exterminators will do this. if they find places that rodents, and particularly rats, are getting into. But they are, I mean, I was shocked when I heard about that too. So yeah, it's a thing.
Thanks. Good to know.
And Carson?
Thank you. No, Liz had brought up what my question was going to be about the rock type that could go in, because once I heard concrete that they could chew through, I was like, well, what kind of rock then can you put there? But I did want to find out, did they mention anything about glass that could be used like temporarily? Because I don't have access to like gravel. So like, could someone like, did they mention anything that could be used temporarily to plug up the rat burrows until they get like the actual gravel?
They didn't really mention anything, in specific, but they did say that even just raking over the holes, shoveling them over, throwing dirt down, what it does is it stresses the rats, and so they don't want to burrow there. Now they may get out and go elsewhere, but when they're stressed out, they reproduce less. So anything that we can do to get them to make fewer rats is a plus. And then if we can get them to vacate a place or get them stuck in a place, I mean, I'll tell you honestly, in my yard, and this predates all of this, but when I bought my house, we had a rat problem in the front yard. Fortunately, nothing in the house, but basically I threw down rat poison into those holes, and we cemented over the whole thing, and that was that, and then put bricks on top of that so it looks nice. But that kind of ended the story there. So I guess that's another option, is throw down some rat poison and then throw in whatever you can find. But the pea-sized gravel, some people don't want to kill animals, so but
Thank you.
I think anything that you do that stresses them out, that makes that burrow less habitable. Gardens also, people have garden beds. They have big flower pots, and if you need to check those, because you'd be surprised, they will even use those deeper flower, large, deep flower pots and things to burrow into and to nest in.
I think, and I just wanted to clarify, did you say they could have 84 babies a year or 64 babies?
Yeah, 84.
Oh,
And those 84 grow very, very fast. I don't remember the exact maturation time on a rat, but it's not very long. They they mature and start breeding very, very quickly. So 84 rats easily becomes 84,000 rats. And it doesn't take a whole lot.
And Florencia?
Yeah, I forgot to say, there's been really an influx, and their babies must be having babies really fast, because I see them on Argyle. I forgot to call the board office to say that. I don't think there's anything Sean could do, but yeah, there are a lot. And walking, they're just even chasing each other.
Yeah, well, they're territorial. They'll go after each other to make their space. But I was actually in a park last year, and as the sun was setting, all of a sudden we just saw the rats like sort of coming up the hill, like from the bottom edge of the park, just moving their way up into where we were. It was pretty horrifying, because there were a lot of them. It wasn't a rat, it was a stampede of rats. I mean, there's just no other way to describe it, and it was pretty shocking. If you see young rats running around, those are generally or if you see rats around in the daytime, they're generally younger rats, and they're out kind of staking out their territories. Once they get more mature, they tend to be more nocturnal.
And yes, do call the office, and with especially if you can provide specific addresses, because we do turn those over to Department of Health and Mental Hygiene, and DOHMH will go out and inspect. They will provide baiting where possible, and or issue violations to poorly maintained buildings. And sometimes even turn it over to HPD when there's actual interagency cooperation.
Thank you.
All right, Nina, thank you for sharing what you learned at Brad Academy. Sorry about the diploma. That is a little disappointing. If there's no other new business,
And I do want to note that Lauren Elvers Collins from the bid is here, in case you wanted to invite her, in case she
oh,
has
of course,
an announcement.
Lauren. Yes, if you have any announcements that you'd like to share, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Ed. Thank you. Hi, everyone. And I don't have much to say. We do have a few events coming up. Thanksgiving luncheon, Thanksgiving Day at the King's Theater. We're looking for volunteers, especially language translators. There's a shelter across the street from King's. So we do have other people who don't speak English, and we're trying to help guide them. And then we have some holiday events coming up on December 2nd, holiday caroling, walking down the street, and on December 9th, Soka Santa and a tree lighting, which we haven't done in like 10 years. So we're very excited. If you need to reach me, Sean has my email address, or if anyone has questions, I'm available to answer whatever. And I went to Rad Academy. It was amazing. I had my takeaway was exactly what you just said, and that was like a year ago. But yeah, it's really a great training.
Thank you, Lauren.
Thank you.
Last call for new business. If not, happy to adjourn this meeting at 7:49. Thank you all for attending. Have a good evening, everyone.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Ed.
Thank
Take
you.
care.
Great meeting.
Good night, all.
Night.
Good night, all.
Good night.
Good night.